Captain Elena Vargas had led 47 missions without losing a soldier. That record ended when her Chinook took enemy fire over the Arctic and crashed hard. 2 of her team are dead, the beacon buried in wreckage. They faced 200 miles of frozen tundra with 3 days of rations and failing gear at minus 43 degrees. Her head bleeds into her eyes. Her tracker has a dislocated shoulder. Her medic's leg shattered in 3 places. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Elena wiped blood from her eyes for the 3rd time in 5 minutes. The gash above her left eyebrow wouldn't stop bleeding, and the cold made it worse. Blood froze in sticky trails down her cheek before she could clear it. She pressed snow against the wound, wincing at the sting, then tied her torn sleeve around her head as a makeshift bandage. Not regulation, but regulation didn't matter anymore. 18 hours ago, she'd stood in the briefing room at Forward Operating Base Kirkens, spreading maps across the table while her team gathered around. The mission parameters were straightforward: aerial reconnaissance of suspected enemy supply routes in the uninhabited Arctic region north of the Barents Sea. Intelligence suggested movement through the corridor, but satellite imagery was inconclusive. They'd go in, take a look, document positions, and be back before dinner. "Weather window looks tight," Lieutenant Petrov had said, tapping the meteorological readout. The pilot was thorough, always had been. "Storm system moving in faster than predicted. We push the timeline, we might catch the edge of it." Elena had studied the forecast. A 12-hour delay would put them clear of any weather concerns. But 12 hours meant missing the optimal reconnaissance window. Enemy convoys moved at night, and intelligence suggested tonight was the scheduled run. Wait 12 hours and they'd photograph empty roads. "We've got a 48-hour window before the storm hits full force," she'd said. "More than enough time to complete the mission and return. We go at 0200. Sergeant Kovac had nodded, accepting her decision without question. 20 years in the field, half of them in Arctic conditions, and he trusted her judgment. Corporal Davies, their medic, was already checking medical supplies. Private First Class Chen tested the communications equipment one more time. Specialist Rodriguez loaded fresh batteries into the reconnaissance cameras. Lieutenant Petrov filed the flight plan. Routine. Professional. 47 missions without a casualty, and Elena intended to keep that record intact. Her father's voice echoed in her memory. The Arctic rescue pilot who died trying to save a downed crew when she was 12. He taught her to respect the cold, to never underestimate what winter could do to the unprepared. She joined the military partly to prove that the Arctic could be mastered, that proper planning and execution could overcome any environment. The helicopter had lifted off at 0200 exactly, rotors cutting through air so cold it felt solid. They'd flown north into darkness, the landscape below invisible except for the occasional glint of moonlight on ice. 2 hours into the flight, Petrov's voice had crackled through the headset. "Weather's deteriorating faster than forecast. Recommend we abort and return to base." Elena had checked her instruments. Wind speed increasing but manageable. Visibility decreasing but adequate. Temperature dropping but within operational parameters. The reconnaissance window was closing. If they turned back now, they'd miss the convoy entirely. "Negative," she'd said. "Continue to target zone." 30 minutes later, the sky had exploded with tracer fire. The enemy position hadn't been on any intelligence report. Ground-based air defense, probably mobile, set up along the route specifically to protect whatever convoy was moving through. The first burst of fire punched through the Chinook's tail rotor assembly like it was made of paper. Warning lights flooded the cockpit red. Petrov fought the controls trying to maintain altitude, but the helicopter was already spinning. "Brace for impact," he'd shouted. Elena remembered the chaos of those 45 seconds. Rodriguez thrown against the bulkhead. Chen grabbing for a handhold and missing. Davies shouting coordinates into the radio, trying to get a mayday out before they hit. Kovac's face calm, already preparing for what came next. And Petrov, working the controls with everything he had, trying to find something soft to crash into. They'd hit hard. The Chinook slammed into a snowbank at an angle that should have killed them all. Metal shrieked. The fuselage crumpled. Elena's head smashed into something, a support beam, a piece of equipment she didn't know, and everything went white, then dark, then white again. When she came to, the helicopter was on its side, partially buried in snow. Wind howled through the torn hull. Her head throbbed with each heartbeat, and blood ran warm down her face. She unstrapped, dropped to what had been the wall, now the floor, and took stock. Petrov was dead, his neck bent at an angle that left no doubt. Rodriguez lay crumpled near the rear hatch, not breathing, chest crushed by a cargo container that had broken free during impact. 2 dead before the survival even began. Chen was conscious but hypothermic, lips already turning blue. Davies sat propped against a seat, his right leg twisted beneath him at an impossible angle. Compound fracture, bone visible through torn fabric and flesh. Kovac was moving, favoring his left shoulder, but functional. 3 survivors out of 6. No, 4 survivors. She had to count herself. Elena crawled to the emergency equipment locker. The impact had jammed it shut. She kicked it twice before the door gave way. Inside, 3 days of emergency rations, a damaged tent with 2 poles snapped. Basic medical supplies, flares that might or might not work in this cold, and an emergency beacon that should have been transmitting automatically. She pulled out the beacon. The casing was cracked, display dark. She tried the activation sequence. Nothing. Tried again. Still nothing. The impact must have destroyed the internal antenna or power supply. Without it, no one would know where they were. The Mayday Davies sent might have gone through, but their exact crash coordinates were buried somewhere in this wreck. Kovac appeared beside her, moving quietly despite his injury. He looked at the dead beacon, then at her. How far to the nearest outpost? His voice was steady, professional, waiting for her to make the call. Elena pulled out her map, checked their last known position against the landmarks she could see through the torn fuselage. Her hands were already numb despite her gloves. 200 miles, she said. Maybe 210. Walking. Kovac nodded slowly, calculating the same impossible math she was. 3 days of food, 8 to 10 days minimum travel time through terrain that killed unprepared people in hours. Davies spoke through gritted teeth, his face gray with pain. Leave me. You and Kovac push hard, send rescue back. Only way any of us make it. Not happening. Elena moved to examine his leg. The compound fracture was bad. Tibia snapped clean through, bone-piercing skin. In a hospital, it would require surgery, pins, months of recovery. Out here, it was a death sentence if infection set in. She pulled morphine from the medical kit. 1 syringe. She had to choose between giving Davies relief now or saving it for later when the pain might be worse. She gave him half the dose, enough to take the edge off, not enough to impair his thinking. Chen's breathing was shallow, rapid, classic hypothermia symptoms. Elena and Kovac wrapped him in every spare piece of fabric they could salvage from the wreck. Flight suits, seat covers, insulation torn from the walls. His body temperature was dropping fast. They needed heat, shelter, and they needed it immediately. We stay with the aircraft, Kovac said. It's shelter. We can signal from here. Elena looked at the wreckage. It was shelter, yes, but it was also a beacon for whoever had shot them down. Enemy forces knew exactly where they were. If a patrol came to confirm the kill, they'd be sitting ducks. And with no functioning beacon, rescue might take days. Days they didn't have. They'll come looking, she said. Whoever hit us, they'll want to confirm we're dead or capture whoever's alive. Kovac's expression didn't change, but she saw him understand. He glanced at Davies' broken leg, at Chen's deteriorating condition. Then we're choosing between quick death from a bullet or slow death from the cold. Elena pulled her compass from her pocket, checked the bearing. South. 200 miles south to the abandoned research station that served as an emergency waypoint. From there, they could signal for evacuation or at least find supplies to extend their survival window. The math was brutal but clear. Stay and die within 24 hours when enemy patrol or hypothermia finished them, or walk and maybe die in 8 days from starvation and exposure. Maybe. That word carried everything. We build a stretcher for Davies, Elena said. Take what we can carry. Mark this position for recovery later. She couldn't say what she meant. Mark it so they could retrieve Petrov's and Rodriguez's bodies. Leaving them felt like failure, like she was abandoning them the same way her father had been left behind in similar snow. Captain? Chen's voice was weak. Too cold. Can't feel my feet. Elena knelt beside him, checked his extremities. His fingers were ice white, frostbite already setting in. She rubbed his hands between hers, trying to force circulation, but his skin stayed cold. He needed warmth immediately, needed it an hour ago. Stay with me, Chen. We're getting you out of here. He nodded, but his eyes were losing focus. Hypothermia was shutting down his brain, making him compliant, passive. Soon he'd stop caring whether he lived or died. The cold did that, made death seem comfortable, even preferable. Elena looked at Kovac. They both knew Chen wouldn't survive the first mile. They worked fast. Kovac used a broken rotor blade to cut aluminum support struts from the helicopter frame, while Elena fashioned a makeshift stretcher using cargo netting and 2 intact poles from the damaged tent. Davies bit down on a strap as they lifted him onto it, his face contorting with pain despite the morphine. The movement jostled his broken leg and he screamed once, sharp and short, before forcing himself silent. Elena divided their salvage supplies. 3 days of military rations, freeze-dried meals designed to sustain soldiers in extreme conditions. She split them into individual packets and distributed them among their packs. At normal consumption rates, 3 days of food. Rationed aggressively, maybe 5 days. Still nowhere near the 8 to 10 days they needed to reach the research station. The damaged tent went into Kovac's pack despite its broken poles. Useless for proper shelter, but the fabric could provide windbreak or extra insulation. Medical supplies were critically low. Bandages, antiseptic, 1 remaining half-dose of morphine. The flares went into Elena's pack along with the dead emergency beacon. Maybe she could repair it given time and tools. Maybe. Chen was fading. His skin had gone from white to grayish blue. Elena stripped off her own outer jacket and wrapped it around him, then used paracord to secure him in a cocoon of every spare layer they could spare. Her remaining jacket was thinner, designed as a mid-layer, not adequate for -43 degrees. Within minutes, she felt the cold cutting through. "Captain, you need that jacket," Kovac said. "He needs it more." Elena checked Chen's pulse, weak and irregular. "We get him warm, keep him moving, maybe his core temperature stabilizes." Kovac didn't argue, but his expression said what they both knew. Chen wasn't going to make it. The hypothermia was too advanced, and they had no way to generate the sustained heat his body needed to recover. Every minute they spent trying to save him was a minute their own survival window narrowed. But Elena wasn't ready to make that call, not yet. They fashioned a harness system using more paracord, distributing Davies' weight between Elena and Kovac. Davies weighed maybe 180. The stretcher added another 30 pounds. Split between 2 people, manageable. But manageable for how long when they were already exhausted, injured, and operating in conditions that sapped strength with every step. Elena checked her compass bearing one more time. South. The research station sat 200 miles due south. She marked their current position on her map, folded it carefully, and tucked it inside her inner pocket, where body heat would keep it from freezing solid. "Move out," she said. Kovac took the front of the stretcher, Elena the rear. Chen stumbled along beside them, barely responsive. They stepped out of the wrecked Chinook into wind that hit like a physical blow. The temperature had dropped since the crash. Elena's improvised head bandage froze stiff within seconds. Blood no longer dripped from the wound. It crystallized before it could fall. Behind them, the helicopter sat broken and dark. Petrov and Rodriguez lay inside, already being claimed by the ice. The first mile took 90 minutes. The stretcher caught on every ridge of packed snow, forcing them to stop, adjust, and continue. Davies' weight pulled at Elena's shoulders until the muscles burned. Her hands gripped the aluminum poles so tightly they cramped, but loosening her grip meant dropping him. Kovac's injured shoulder was clearly bothering him. She could see him favoring his right side, taking more weight on his good arm. Chen fell 3 times in that first mile. Each time Elena called a halt, helped him up, and got him moving again. But each time he rose slower, his movements more mechanical. His eyes were vacant now, tracking nothing. The hypothermia was eating his brain from the inside out. The Arctic landscape stretched endlessly in all directions. No trees, no landmarks, nothing but white snow and gray sky bleeding into each other at the horizon. Navigation was by compass only, and Elena checked it every few hundred yards. The metal housing was already frosting over. She had to breathe on it to clear the ice, and her breath froze instantly, making it worse. "Brake," Kovac said. They lowered the stretcher. Elena's arms shook with exhaustion. She checked her watch. 600 hours. They'd been walking for 90 minutes and covered maybe 1 mile. At this rate, 200 miles would take 300 hours. 12 and a half days. They'd be dead from starvation in 8. "We need to move faster," Elena said. "Can't move faster carrying him." Kovac gestured at Davies, who lay pale and sweating despite the cold. His broken leg was swelling inside his torn pants, the fabric tight against infected flesh. Chen had stopped walking. He stood 10 feet away, swaying slightly, staring at nothing. "Chen." Elena walked to him, grabbed his shoulders. "Stay with me. Keep moving." He looked at her with eyes that didn't recognize her face. His lips moved, but no sound came out. Then his knees buckled and he collapsed into the snow. Elena caught him, lowered him down, checked for a pulse. There, faint, irregular, but there. "Help me get him up," she said to Kovac. Kovac didn't move. "Captain, he's gone. We can't carry 2 people." "He's not gone. He has a pulse." "For how long?" Kovac's voice was quiet but firm. "Another hour. 2. We use every bit of strength we have carrying him, and then what? He dies anyway, and we've wasted energy we needed to save Davies. To save ourselves." Elena wanted to argue, but the math was undeniable. Chen weighed maybe 150. Add him to the stretcher load and they'd be carrying over 300 pounds between them. They'd be lucky to make half a mile per hour. The energy expenditure would drain their reserves faster. They'd need more food, but they didn't have more food. "I don't leave soldiers behind," Elena said. "You're not leaving him. You're making a command decision." Kovac held her gaze. "A decision that gives the rest of us a chance." Elena knelt in the snow beside Chen. His breathing was barely perceptible, chest rising and falling in shallow movements. She stripped off her outer gloves, her hands instantly aching in the cold, and pressed 2 fingers against his neck. The pulse was there but fading, like a drum beating slower and slower until it would eventually stop. 47 missions, 0 casualties. That record was already broken, but leaving Chen here, alive, felt different than recovering bodies from a crash. This was a choice, an active decision to let him die. "We can wrap him, make him comfortable," Kovac said softly. "Mark the position. When rescue comes, they'll recover him." If rescue comes, Elena thought, if we make it far enough to send help back, if we don't all die in the snow before reaching anyone. She looked at Davies on the stretcher. He was watching her, lucid despite the pain. His eyes held no judgment, just acceptance. He knew what she had to decide. He knew because he'd already offered to be left behind himself. "Captain." Chen's voice was barely a whisper. Elena leaned close. His lips were blue-black, words slurred. "Cold, so cold." "I know, I'm going to get you warm." But she wasn't. She couldn't. And he seemed to know it too because his next words were, "Tell my sister, tried." "You're going to tell her yourself," Elena said, but the words felt hollow even as she spoke them. Chen's eyes drifted closed. His breathing slowed further. Elena wrapped her jacket tighter around him, knowing it wouldn't be enough. Hypothermia had him now, pulling him down into sleep that would become death. The kindest thing would be to make him comfortable and let it happen. The cruel thing would be to keep him conscious and aware as his body shut down. She pulled out the emergency blanket from the medical kit, reflective material designed to retain body heat. She wrapped it around Chen, tucked it carefully, then used the last of their paracord to secure it. She took off her own neck gaiter and wrapped it around his face, covering his nose and mouth to warm the air he breathed. 30 minutes, she told Kovac. "We give him 30 minutes to see if his core temperature stabilizes." Kovac said nothing. They both knew 30 minutes wouldn't make a difference. But 30 minutes gave Elena time to accept what she had to do. Time to make peace with the decision that would haunt her for the rest of her life, however long that life lasted. Davies spoke from the stretcher, his voice tight with pain. "Captain, he's already gone. You're just watching it happen slow." Elena wanted to snap at him, to order him to shut up, to maintain the fiction that they could save everyone. But Davies was right. Chen's pulse was barely detectable now. His breathing had become irregular, stopping for seconds at a time before resuming. His body was shutting down, systems failing one by one. She stayed beside him for 23 minutes. Then his breathing stopped entirely and didn't start again. Elena checked her watch. 23 minutes since Chen's last breath. She pressed her fingers to his neck one final time. Nothing. She closed his eyes, then stood and marked the GPS coordinates on her map. Someone would come back for him. Someone had to. "We need to move," Kovacs said. "We've been stationary too long, losing body heat." Elena nodded. Her hands were numb despite her gloves. Her feet ached with cold. Standing still in minus 43 degrees was its own death sentence. They lifted Davies' stretcher and continued south. Behind them, Chen lay wrapped in the emergency blanket, a small mound in the endless white. 3 dead now. 3 soldiers who trusted her command and paid for it with their lives. This story takes time to craft. If you're enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Elena checked her watch. 23 minutes since Chen's last breath. She pressed her fingers to his neck one final time. Nothing. She closed his eyes, then stood and marked the GPS coordinates on her map. Someone would come back for him. Someone had to. "We need to move," Kovacs said. "We've been stationary too long, losing body heat." Elena nodded. Her hands were numb despite her gloves. Her feet ached with cold. Standing still in minus 43 degrees was its own death sentence. They lifted Davies' stretcher and continued south. Behind them, Chen lay wrapped in the emergency blanket, a small mound in the endless white. 3 dead now. 3 soldiers who trusted her command and paid for it with their lives. The next 4 hours blurred together into a rhythm of pain and movement. Lift the stretcher, walk 50 paces, lower it, rest 30 seconds, lift again, walk, rest, repeat. Elena's shoulders screamed, her back cramped. The aluminum poles bit through her gloves into her palms, raising blisters that popped and froze. Kovacs' face had gone gray, his jaw clenched tight against the pain in his shoulder. But he never complained, never asked to stop longer than their brief rests. He checked the compass, confirmed their bearing, and lifted his end of the stretcher without a word. Davies drifted in and out of consciousness. When he was awake, his breathing was rapid and shallow. Infection was setting into his leg. Elena could smell it, a sickly sweet odor that cut through even the freezing air. His forehead burned with fever. She'd given him the last of the morphine an hour ago, but it wasn't enough. Nothing was enough. At noon, they stopped to eat. Elena rationed out 1/3 of a meal packet per person, freeze-dried beef stew that required hot water they didn't have. They ate it dry, chunks of dehydrated meat and vegetables that stuck in their throats. It tasted like cardboard and salt, but their bodies needed the calories desperately. "How far?" Davies asked, his voice hoarse. Elena checked her map, calculated their position based on the compass bearing and estimated distance traveled. "Maybe 8 miles from the crash site, 192 to go." Davies laughed, a bitter sound that turned into a cough. "We're dead. You know that, right? Both of you. You're dying to carry a corpse." "You're not dead yet," Kovacs said. "Give me a few hours." Davies closed his eyes. "Should have left me with Chen. Should have left both of us and pushed hard. Might have actually made it." Elena wanted to tell him he was wrong, that they'd all make it, that rescue was coming, but the lies wouldn't come. Her training, her experience, her 47 missions of success, none of it had prepared her for this, for the mathematics of death, where every choice led to the same outcome, just with different variables. By 1400 hours, the GPS unit failed. Elena pulled it from her pack, tried the power button 3 times, got nothing. The lithium batteries had died in the cold despite being stored against her body. She'd known it would happen eventually. Electronics failed in extreme cold. It was basic physics. But losing navigation made everything harder. Compass only now, she told Kovac. He nodded, already pulling his own compass from his pocket as backup. 2 compasses meant they could cross-check bearings, make sure neither had been damaged or thrown off by magnetic anomalies in the Arctic. But compasses only gave direction, not distance. They'd have to dead reckon their position, estimate their progress, hope their calculations were right. The wind picked up around 1500 hours, not the storm Petrov had warned about. That wasn't due for another day, but enough to drop the wind chill to dangerous levels. Elena felt it cutting through her thin mid-layer jacket, the one she'd given up when she wrapped Chen. Her core temperature was dropping. She could feel it in the way her thoughts came slower, in the way her fingers wouldn't quite grip the stretcher poles properly. Frostbite was setting into her toes. She could tell by the numbness, by the way her boots felt looser as circulation failed and tissue began to freeze. She'd lose toes if they survived this. Maybe the whole foot if they didn't get to warmth soon. But losing toes was better than losing her life, and right now both seemed equally likely. "We need shelter," Kovac said. "Before dark." Elena scanned the landscape. Nothing. No trees, no rocks, no natural windbreaks. Just flat tundra stretching forever. They'd have to build something from scratch using the damaged tent and snow blocks. It would take an hour minimum, maybe 2 in their exhausted state, an hour they couldn't afford to lose. But Kovac was right. They couldn't march through the night. The temperature would drop further after sunset, and they were already hypothermic. Push through darkness, and they'd collapse, freeze, die. There! Elena pointed to a slight depression in the snow, a place where the wind had carved out a shallow bowl. Not much, but enough to give them a small advantage. They could build a snow wall on the windward side, stretch the tent fabric across it, create a space barely big enough for 3 people. They lowered Davy's stretcher into the depression. He was unconscious again, fever making him shake despite the cold. Elena checked his leg. The swelling had spread above his knee, the flesh hot and tight. Sepsis, blood poisoning spreading through his system. Without antibiotics, he'd be dead in 2 days, maybe less. She didn't tell Kovac. He could see it himself. Building the shelter took 90 minutes. They cut blocks of packed snow using a piece of aluminum from the stretcher frame, stacked them in a low wall. The wind fought them every step, knocking blocks down, driving ice crystals into their faces. Elena's hands were beyond cold now, moving mechanically without feeling. She couldn't tell if she was gripping the snow blocks or dropping them until she saw them in place. When the shelter was complete, they dragged Davies inside and collapsed beside him. The space was barely 4 feet across, maybe 3 feet high. They had to lie pressed together, sharing body heat because there was no other choice. Elena pulled the damaged tent fabric across the entrance, sealing them in. The wind noise dropped to a muffled howl. Darkness, complete and absolute. Elena's headlamp had died an hour ago, batteries frozen. Kovac's was failing, giving off a weak amber glow that barely penetrated the black. They conserved it, clicked it off, sat in darkness that felt suffocating despite the wind still finding ways through gaps in their shelter. Elena's head wound had reopened during the shelter construction. She felt blood trickling down her temple but couldn't see it in the darkness. The concussion was getting worse. She could tell by the way the world seemed to tilt randomly, by the nausea that came in waves, by the way she kept losing track of time. "Talk to me," Kovac said. "Stay present." "I'm present." "You drifted off, been sitting silent for 20 minutes. Had she? Elena couldn't remember. Time was becoming slippery, unreliable. She forced herself to focus, to ground herself in concrete details. They'd covered maybe 12 miles today. 188 to go. They had 2 days of rations left. At this pace, 7 or 8 more days of walking, they wouldn't make it. The math didn't work. "My father died in weather like this," Elena heard herself say. The words came without planning, pulled out by exhaustion and darkness. Search and rescue pilot. Helicopter went down trying to extract a research team from the ice. He got them out, all 4 of them, but the helicopter couldn't lift off with everyone aboard. Too much weight. Kovac said nothing, just listened. He stayed behind, told them to go, He'd wait for the second extraction, but the storm moved in too fast. By the time they got back to him, he'd been in the cold for 6 hours. Hypothermia and frostbite. He died 2 days later in hospital. Elena's voice was flat, reciting facts. I was 12. Decided right then I'd never let the Arctic win. Never let it take anyone else. And now it's taking everyone. Now it's taking everyone, Elena agreed. Davies stirred between them, mumbling fever dreams. His skin was burning up, fighting an infection it couldn't beat. Elena put her hand on his forehead, felt the heat radiating from him. In normal circumstances, fever was the body's defense mechanism. Out here, it was just burning through his energy reserves faster, speeding up his death. You made the right calls, Kovac said quietly. The mission window was closing. Weather forecast said we had time. You couldn't have known about the ground fire. Petrov knew the weather was turning bad. I overruled him. You made a command decision based on available intel. That's what commanders do. And 3 people are dead because of it. Kovac shifted in the darkness. Want to know what my father taught me about the Arctic? He was Inuit, grew up on the ice. He said the Arctic doesn't care about your plans or your pride. It just is. You don't beat it. You accept it and find your way through. We're not finding our way through. We're dying slowly. Not dead yet. Kovac's breathing was labored, the pain in his shoulder clearly worsening. My old man also said survival isn't about strength. It's about refusing to quit when every part of you wants to lie down. Elena felt her eyes closing despite herself. The exhaustion was overwhelming, pulling her down into sleep that might become something worse. She forced them open again, pinched her arm hard enough to hurt through the numbness. Stay awake, she told herself as much as Kovac. We fall asleep in this cold. We might not wake up. Then tell me about those 47 missions. Tell me why you've got the best record in NATO. So Elena talked. She talked about operations in the Balkans, about extraction missions in hostile territory, about the time her team had rescued hostages from a compound in Yemen. She talked until her voice gave out, until the words were just sounds to keep the darkness at bay. And Kovac listened, adding his own stories, keeping them both conscious through the longest night of their lives. Dawn came slowly, gray light filtering through the tent fabric. Elena had dozed for maybe 20 minutes total through the night, jerking awake each time her body temperature dropped too far or Davies' fevered mumbling grew louder. Kovac had stayed awake, she thought, though in the darkness it was impossible to tell. She pulled back the tent fabric. The wind had died during the night, but the temperature had dropped further. Her thermometer read -50 degrees. The air hurt to breathe, each inhalation searing her lungs like she was inhaling broken glass. They ate breakfast in silence, half a ration pack each, dehydrated eggs and bacon that tasted like salted cardboard. Elena's stomach cramped with hunger even as she chewed. Her body was burning through calories at an enormous rate. Fighting the cold, hauling the stretcher, just staying alive in these conditions required thousands of calories per day. They were getting maybe 1,200. Davies woke briefly, conscious enough to eat a few bites before the pain pulled him back under. His leg was worse. The infection had spread to his groin, lymph nodes swollen and hard. Elena changed his bandages, cleaned the wound as best she could with their limited supplies. The bone was still exposed, tissue around it blackening with necrosis. In a hospital, they'd amputate. Out here, there was nothing to do but watch him die. How much further can we carry him? Kovac asked when Davies had passed out again. Elena knew what he was really asking. How long until we have to make the same choice we made with Chen? As far as we can, she said. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I have. They broke down the shelter, loaded the stretcher, and continued south. Elena's feet were numb now, completely without feeling. She couldn't tell if she was stepping on rocks or flat snow. Her toes were gone. Frostbite had taken them during the night. She'd lose them for sure if they made it to a hospital. Might lose the whole foot. Kovac was limping. His shoulder had stiffened overnight, the dislocated joint swelling until his entire left side was compromised. He carried his end of the stretcher with his right hand only, body twisted awkwardly to compensate. It cut their speed even further. By noon, they'd covered 4 miles. Elena's head was pounding, vision blurring at the edges. The concussion was getting worse, not better. She kept seeing things that weren't there. Rodriguez walking beside them, Chen pointing at something on the horizon. Hallucinations brought on by head trauma and exhaustion. "Captain," Kovac said, "you need to stop. Rest." "Can't stop. Have to keep moving." "You're weaving, walking in circles. Check the compass." Elena pulled out her compass, tried to focus on it. The needle swam in her vision, doubling and tripling. She couldn't tell which direction was south anymore. The world tilted suddenly and she fell, face first into the snow. Kovac dragged her upright. His grip was strong, despite his injured shoulder, fingers digging into her arm hard enough to hurt. The pain cut through the fog in her head, brought her back to something like awareness. "Stay with me," he said. "Look at me. Focus." Elena forced her eyes to meet his. His face was gray with exhaustion and cold, lips cracked and bleeding, but his eyes were alert, clear. He was holding it together better than she was. "I'm fine," she said. "You're not fine. You have a severe concussion. You're hypothermic. You haven't slept in 2 days." Kovac checked her pupils, watching how they reacted to light. Uneven dilation. That's bad. Real bad. Can still walk. For how long? He looked at Davies on the stretcher, then back at Elena. "We're down to 2 functional people. If you go down, it's just me. I can't carry both of you." Elena knew he was right, but accepting it felt like surrender. She'd led this mission. These were her people, her responsibility. If she couldn't function, if she became another casualty, then everything, all the death, all the suffering, would be for nothing. "Give me 10 minutes, she said. "I'll be okay." Kovac didn't argue. He lowered the stretcher, checked Davies' vitals, then sat heavily in the snow. His face tightened with pain as the movement jarred his shoulder. Elena saw him reach for the joint, probing it gently, feeling for damage. "How bad?" she asked. "Dislocated. Needs to be reset, but I can't do it myself. Needs someone with strength to pull it back into place." He looked at her. "You're in no condition to try." After we rest, he agreed, but they both knew that wasn't going to happen. Elena didn't have the strength to reset a shoulder. She could barely stand. She forced herself to eat another quarter ration, washing it down with snow melted in her mouth. The cold water hit her stomach and cramped it immediately. She doubled over, fighting the urge to vomit. Couldn't afford to lose the calories. Had to keep them down. Davies woke briefly, eyes unfocused. "Where are we?" 16 miles from the crash, Elena said. 184 to go. He laughed, a wet rattling sound. "Not going to make it." "We'll make it." "No." Davies' voice was surprisingly clear for a moment. "Listen to me, both of you. I'm dead. Sepsis has me. Maybe one more day, maybe less. Every hour you carry me is an hour you're not covering ground." "We're not leaving you," Elena said. "Yes, you are." Davies reached out, grabbed her hand with surprising strength. "That's an order, Captain. You leave me with supplies and you push hard. You send rescue back if you make it. That's how this works." "Davies, I have a daughter, 8 years old. Her name is Sarah." His eyes locked on Elena's. "You make it out. You tell her I tried. That's all I ask." Elena sat in the snow beside the stretcher, Davies' hand still gripping hers. Every part of her training, every instinct, every promise she'd made to herself screamed against what he was asking. No soldier left behind. That was the code. That was what separated them from the enemy. You brought your people home, alive or dead. You brought them home. But the math was undeniable. Davies weighed 180. The stretcher added 30 pounds. Split between 2 people who were already starving, hypothermic, and injured. That load cut their speed by more than half. At their current pace, they were covering maybe 6 miles per day. They had 1.5 days of food left. Rationed aggressively, maybe 2 days. Still nowhere near enough. Without Davies, they could maybe double their speed. 12 miles per day. Still not enough, but closer. Close enough that if they got lucky, if the weather held, if they didn't collapse from exhaustion or freeze to death in their sleep, they might actually reach the research station. Might. That word again, carrying everything. "Captain," Kovac's voice was gentle. "He's right. You know he's right." Elena pulled her hand free from Davy's, stood up, walked 10 paces away. She couldn't look at either of them, couldn't face what she was about to do. This wasn't like Chen slipping away from hypothermia. This was a conscious choice to leave a living, breathing soldier behind in the snow to die alone. Her father's face floated up in her memory. The funeral, his flag-draped coffin, her mother's tears. He'd stayed behind so others could live, made the sacrifice play. Everyone called him a hero, but Elena had been 12, and she just wanted her father back. Heroism was cold comfort to the people left behind. "How long?" she asked Kovac quietly. "If we leave him, how long does he have?" "With the infection, maybe 24 hours, maybe less." Kovac stood beside her, not touching, just present. "He'll go unconscious soon. Sepsis will take him. He won't suffer long. That's supposed to make this easier." "Nothing makes this easier, but it's the choice that gives the rest of us a chance." Elena turned back to Davies. His eyes were closed, breathing labored. He'd said his piece and now he was conserving energy, preparing for what came next, accepting it with more grace than she could muster. "We leave him the tent," Elena said, voice flat. "All the remaining medical supplies. Half the food." "Captain, we need that food." "Half the food." Elena's voice cut like broken glass. "He gets to eat. He gets to stay warm as long as possible. He doesn't die like an animal in the snow." Kovac nodded slowly. "Half the food." They built a shelter for Davies using the damaged tent in snow blocks, creating a small space he could survive in for a day, maybe two if he was lucky. They left him the emergency blanket, the remaining bandages, painkillers that wouldn't do much but might take the edge off. And they left him half their food, 3/4 of a day's rations that they desperately needed, but that felt like the least they could do. Davies was conscious when they finished the shelter. Elena knelt beside him one last time, pulled out her notebook, and wrote down the coordinates. "I'm marking this position. When we reach help, I'm sending them back for you. You hold on. You stay alive." "Sure, Captain." Davies managed a weak smile. "I'll be here." "Tell me about Sarah," Elena said. "Your daughter." Davies' eyes lit up despite the pain. "She's 8, wants to be a veterinarian, loves horses more than anything. I promised her I'd take her riding when I got back." His voice cracked. "You tell her I kept my promises, even the hard ones." Elena gripped his hand. "You're going to tell her yourself." But Davies shook his head. "We both know better. Just tell her, okay? Tell her I thought about her at the end, that she made everything worth it." Kovac placed his canteen beside Davies, full of melted snow. "Drink when you can. Stay hydrated." "Thanks, Sarge." Davies looked at them both. "You two better make it. Don't let this be for nothing." Elena stood, every muscle screaming at her to stay, to refuse, to keep carrying him no matter what the math said. But Kovac was already walking south, and if she didn't follow, they'd both die here. She took one step, then another. Behind her, Davies called out one last time. "Captain, make it count." Elena didn't look back. Couldn't. If she looked back, she'd never leave. And then they'd all die here together. Without the stretcher, Elena and Kovac moved faster. Not fast, they were too exhausted, too damaged for that. But faster. 10 miles the first day, 12 the second. The math started to shift, started to show the faint outline of survival possibility instead of guaranteed death. But the cost was brutal. Elena's feet were destroyed, 3 toes on her left foot completely black with frostbite, 2 on her right showing early necrosis. Every step was agony, even though she couldn't feel them anymore. Her body knew they were damaged, sent pain signals up her legs that made her want to scream. Kovac's shoulder was worse. The joint had frozen in its dislocated position, arm hanging useless at his side. He carried his pack with one hand, stumbled frequently, his balance thrown off by the injury. But he kept moving, kept checking the compass, kept them on course south. They'd been walking for 4 days since leaving Davies. The food was gone, completely gone. They'd eaten the last quarter ration 2 days ago, and since then had consumed nothing but snow. Elena's body was eating itself, breaking down muscle tissue for energy. She'd lost maybe 20 pounds. Kovac had lost more. His face was skeletal, eyes sunken deep in his skull. The hallucinations were constant now. Elena saw her father walking beside her, offering advice in his calm pilot's voice. Saw Rodriguez and Chen ahead on the trail, waving them forward. Saw Davies sitting in the snow, asking why they'd left him. She knew none of it was real, but her brain couldn't stop creating the visions. "Talk to me," Kovac said. It had become their mantra, the thing they said to each other every hour to confirm they were both still conscious, still functional. "Where are we?" Elena pulled out the map with shaking hands, checked their position against the compass bearing. 62 miles from Davies' position, 122 to the station. "How many days, you figure?" "At current pace, 10, maybe 12. Elena folded the map, tucked it away. "We have 0 food, 0 calories. We're running on fumes. Then we find food. There's nothing out here, no animals, no plants, nothing." Elena gestured at the endless white. "This is the most barren place on Earth." Kovac stopped walking, turned to face her. His eyes were clear despite everything, focused with an intensity that cut through her exhaustion. "You know what my father told me when I was learning to hunt? The Arctic isn't empty. You just have to know how to look. We don't have time to hunt. We don't have time not to." Kovac pointed at something in the snow. Elena followed his gesture, saw tracks. Small, barely visible, but tracks nonetheless. Arctic hare, maybe 6 hours old. "We can't catch a hare with our bare hands." "No, but we can trap one." Kovac knelt, examining the tracks more closely. "They follow patterns, use the same trails. We set up along their route. We wait, we eat." They spent 3 hours setting the trap. Kovac showed Elena how to construct a snare using paracord from their gear, creating a loop positioned along what he identified as a hare trail. The tracks converged here, a natural funnel between 2 small rises in the terrain. Animals were creatures of habit, he explained. They used the same routes repeatedly because those routes were tested, safe, efficient. Elena's hands fumbled with the cord, fingers too numb to tie proper knots. Kovac had to do most of the work one-handed, his injured shoulder making everything twice as hard. But slowly the trap took shape, a simple snare that would tighten around the hare's neck when it passed through, killing it quickly. "Now we wait," Kovac said. "For how long?" "However long it takes." They dug into the snow downwind of the trap, creating a shallow hide where they could watch without being seen or smelled. The wind was brutal, cutting through their inadequate clothing, but they had no choice. Movement would scare off any animal. They had to stay still, stay silent, and hope. 1 hour passed. 2. Elena's body temperature dropped dangerously low. She could feel herself shutting down, systems failing one by one. Her vision tunneled. Her thoughts became sluggish, disconnected. Beside her, Kovac was barely breathing, conserving every bit of energy. 3 hours. Elena started to drift, consciousness fading. This was how hypothermia killed, gently, quietly, pulling you down into sleep that became death. She forced her eyes open, bit her tongue hard enough to taste blood. The pain brought her back. 4 hours. The sun was setting, temperature dropping further. Elena knew they couldn't stay here much longer. Another hour, and they'd be too hypothermic to walk. They'd die in this hide, frozen solid, still waiting for a hare that might never come. Then movement. Small, cautious, emerging from behind a drift. The Arctic hare was bigger than Elena expected, maybe 10 pounds of meat and fur. It moved in short hops, stopping frequently to scan for danger. Its white coat made it nearly invisible against the snow. Elena held her breath. Beside her, Kovac was absolutely still. The hare hopped closer to the snare, paused, sniffed the air. For a terrible moment, Elena thought it would bolt, that their scent or some instinct would warn it away. The hare hopped forward. Its head went through the loop. Kovac yanked the cord and the snare tightened instantly. The hare thrashed, desperate, but the noose held. 30 seconds and it was over. Kovac pulled the hare from the trap, his one good hand efficient despite the cold. Elena crawled from the hide, every movement an effort. Her legs barely supported her weight, but they had food, actual food, calories that could keep them alive. "We need fire," Elena said through chattering teeth. No fire, smoke could be seen for miles. Enemy patrols might still be searching. Kovac pulled out his knife. We eat it raw. Elena had eaten raw meat before during survival training, but training was controlled, supervised, with medical support nearby if something went wrong. This was different. This was desperation food. The kind of meal that could save your life or kill you with parasites or bacteria. They had no choice. Kovac field-dressed the hare with practiced efficiency. His knife worked clean despite using only one hand. He split the carcass, divided it evenly, handed Elena her portion. The meat was still warm, blood steaming in the frigid air. Elena bit into it. The taste was overwhelming, iron and salt and something wild that her civilized palate rejected immediately. Her stomach heaved, threatening to expel it. She forced herself to chew, to swallow, to keep it down. Her body needed this, needed the protein, the fat, the calories that could fuel another few days of walking. Kovac ate methodically, not rushing, giving his stomach time to accept the food. Small bites, he said. We haven't eaten in 2 days. Too much too fast and we'll vomit it all up. They ate slowly, carefully, letting their shrunken stomachs adjust. The meat was tough, stringy, but it was food. Real food. Elena felt strength returning almost immediately, probably psychological more than physical, but it mattered. Hope mattered. When they finished, Kovac wrapped the remaining meat in cloth torn from his shirt, packed it carefully. 3 more days of food if we're careful, maybe 4. Gets us to 80 miles out, Elena calculated, still 40 miles short. We set more traps as we go. Look for other food sources. Kovac stood, swaying slightly. Arctic isn't empty, just sparse. They walked through the night, covering another 6 miles before exhaustion forced them to stop. Elena built a snow shelter using techniques Kovac had taught her, creating a small space barely big enough for 2. They huddled together, sharing body heat, both of them shaking with cold despite the food in their stomachs. Davies is dead by now, Elena said into the darkness. Been 6 days since we left him. Probably. I killed him, left him to die alone. Kovac was quiet for a long moment. You gave him a chance, gave all of us a chance. He understood that. Does understanding make it right? Nothing makes it right, but it was the only choice that didn't kill everyone. Kovac shifted, his breathing labored. My father had to leave his partner once, during a hunt that went wrong. Partner broke his leg, couldn't walk. My father had to choose, stay and both die, or go for help. He went for help. Got back 3 days later and found his partner alive. Barely, but alive. And if he'd found him dead, then he'd have lived with that, same as you're going to live with Davies and Chen and the others. That's the cost of command, Captain. You carry the weight of every decision forever. Elena closed her eyes, but sleep wouldn't come. Her mind kept circling back to Davies in his shelter, to Chen wrapped in the emergency blanket, to Rodriguez and Petrov in the wreckage. 4 dead, maybe 5 if rescue never reached Davies in time. Her father's voice echoed in her memory, something he'd told her when she was 10 years old, before the Arctic took him. Command isn't about being perfect, Elena. It's about making the best decision you can with what you know, then living with the consequences. She'd thought she understood. She hadn't. Not until now. Morning came with clear skies and brutal cold. Minus 52 degrees. They ate a small portion of the remaining hare meat and continued south. Elena's left foot was completely numb now, the frostbite claiming everything below the ankle. She walked on it mechanically, her brain no longer receiving signals from the dying tissue. Kovac was fading too. His face had gone gray, lips blue-tinged. The dislocated shoulder was infected. She could smell it, see the red streaks spreading up his arm. Blood poisoning. He had maybe 3 days before sepsis took him the same way it had taken Davies. How far? Kovac asked, his voice hoarse. Elena checked the map. 74 miles. If we push hard, we might make it in 6 days. I won't last 6 days. Then we'll make it in 5. If this story meant something to you, drop a comment and share it. It helps the next person find their way here.